Good morning, Liberty North Psych II students. Welcome. It is Tuesday, April 21st. Okay, and we are going to continue on with our last chapter, which is psych treatments. We're going to be basically doing the same thing with the last chapter. You're going to take a chart, take notes in a chart, in which you will then take a pick and turn it into me for points. So your chapter 7 psych disorder chart needs to be turned in by the end of this week with your psych disorder assignments, which are on Canvas. And then as we go down our last chapter, chapter 8, psych treatments, we're going to do the same thing. So you'll take notes on this chart, and then you'll take a pick and turn that into me as well, okay, where you can share it with me. All right, so today we're going to do our first two treatments. So again, just to review, again, we have two different types of treatments in psychology. So we have biomedical, which are basically treatments that directly impact the brain or change something or treat something about the brain, biology, and physiology. Okay. And then we have psychotherapy, which is basically a prescribed therapy method, procedure for treating psych disorders. Okay. Or psychological or mental illness. Okay. All right, so we're going to fill this one out first. So we're going to go over our treatments first. And again, this is always step 1. And hopefully this takes care of the problem. And step 2 would be then our alternates over here. So we like to try to do therapy first before we start altering the brain, which is what we usually do on any of those treatments, okay? All right, so our first type of therapy is going to be psychoanalysis. Okay, and I'll show you close up when I'm done. So again, now if you go back and look at your notes on the perspectives of psychology, which we did way back at the beginning in the intro to the class, basically every perspective is going to have its own specific type of therapy, if you will, procedure method that is used to help treat psych disorders, okay? So, and basically it's the same chart pretty much. It's, you know, they're going to address and treat what they believe is the main influence on behavior, which for psychoanalysis is the unconscious. Okay, unconscious mind. Okay, so, and also I'm going to put in here childhood trauma. Okay. All right, so show you a close-up of that. All right, so the first one is psychoanalysis, okay, which again, when we go back to the beginning, believes that our unconscious mind is the main influence on our behavior, okay? So therefore, that's what's going to have to be treated when we have a psych disorder, is we're going to have to get in and treat the unconscious mind with issues that it's having. All right, and then a lot of times that leads people to childhood trauma, okay, that they have repressed, blocked from their memory, or they just have not dealt with yet. They just kind of keep it in their unconscious, okay? So, so that is psychoanalysis. Now, I will tell you, psychoanalysis is kind of unique in that it takes a long time. And in our society today, that's not very popular. We want a quick fix. You know, we want a prescription. We want to feel better now. Psychoanalysis is a needed therapy technique that gets into the unconscious mind and looks for repressed or blocked or unconscious motives, feelings that just lead to the psych disorder. So, or are an element of the psych disorder. So, and sometimes what we bury there is very painful. So it takes a long time to dig it out. And that's what you try to pretty much do in psychoanalysis, is you go back and revisit trauma experiences. And what you try to do is get them into the conscious mind to where they can be recognized and accepted. And then they have to be dealt with. And then basically symptoms can kind of start to get better, to lessen at that point. So we'll talk about with dissociative disorders. This is big because the main qualifier, if you remember those disorders, is extreme childhood abuse or trauma in childhood. Okay, it has to be in childhood. And then those what happens is you have to go back and get those people to relive that, dig that up, and accept it, and then learn and heal and cope from it. Okay, so not used very much today anymore because it actually has a modern form, which is psychodynamic therapy, which is kind of based on this, but they try to put it in a more quicker, efficient model, if you will, because that's what society values. You know, nobody really wants to, like my student whose dad was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder. You know, he was in therapy for 7 years, or was in therapy for 7 years. He'd be going on 9 or 10 now. You know, that's just a long time to be in therapy. Not that it wasn't needed, and he saw daily the benefits of therapy and wanted to keep going. But, you know, that's kind of, it's hard to get to the unconscious mind, and we can bury a lot of stuff down there. And we can also have a lot of, you know, unhealthy motives and desires that are down there that we need to get treated. Okay. All right. So that's psychoanalysis. Okay. Number 2 is behavioral therapy. Okay. You remember back, that's the environment. Okay. So you Psych 1 students, if you remember back to our learning chapter that you covered, which was conditioning, operant and classical conditioning. All right. That's basically what you're going to get with behavioral therapy. Again, behavioristic views the main influence on behavior is our environment. Okay. So therefore we need to treat and change the environment when we're dealing with psych disorders. And the main tool and method of doing that is conditioning. Okay. So that would be operant and classical. Okay, so we're going to use versions of that, which can be aversion therapy. You know, there are many different types of therapies that we can do in that. Exposure therapy, so expose people to it. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to try to get you in contact with whatever it is that's creating the issue and change the environment, right? Because that's what we're going to try to treat. So just examples, like if somebody has a phobia, this is pretty big successful treatment for phobias. You know, we're going to get you in contact with the phobia. Let's say it's a fear of heights. We're going to get you in contact with the heights, and then we're going to reinforce you and give you little doses of heights at times, right? Step by step, which is operant. And we're going to reinforce you when you can overcome it, and we're going to associate something positive with it while you're trying to go through therapy. So I just actually read a research they were doing. It was something with flight or fear of flying, which basically is now we know is probably the fear of heights and claustrophobia because you feel trapped, and just things that they were doing. And one of them is an exposure therapy now where you can take a virtual reality flight, so you can go through the whole process virtually and do the flight, and then you're reinforced and you do parts of it at a time, you talk about it. And then there's also where they take groups of people to the airport and they have them tour a plane, talk to the pilots, you know, and stuff like that. So what they're doing is they're reinforcing them for small steps. So it's kind of like shaping in Skinner, if you remember that. And then they're also associating it with knowledge, safety, you know, stuff like that. So this actually is going to be much faster than this. Now, this could take a little bit of time, but generally not much. I think in AP, we actually watched somebody undergoing therapy for arachnophobia and then coulrophobia, which is the fear of clowns. And, you know, they go through it pretty quickly. So, you know, you can get kind of immediate results and very quickly overcome it. Now, that's not to say that you can do that with every disorder, right? But each one of these kind of have their own niche, which is why today, if you're going to go into the clinical field, you need to have an eclectic training. You need to have the ability to perform all types of treatments so that you can there deal with all types of disorders. Because This is prevalent in one type. This is prevalent in more than one type, but it doesn't work. Neither one of them work on every disorder. So you have to kind of make sure you have a lot of tools in your toolkit when you're treating people with psych disorders. So behavioral, again, is mainly I'm going to use conditioning and say, right, so I'm going to treat somebody in their environment. I'm going to condition them slowly over time to get rid of a fear, to deal with something that's creating anxiety, depression, or whatever. Okay, but I'm basically going to use these type of therapy techniques. This one is very, very popular today. I think it's behavioral therapy is used in combination with just a lot of different therapy techniques, mainly cognitive and humanistic. So it's very popular. So this one has a real specific niche. This one can be used on several different disorders. Again, one of the last things we'll do is we'll go back and we'll write down all the treatments for each disorder. And you're going to see behavioral will come up quite a bit. This will only come up once. Behavioral will come up quite a bit. If you have a service dog, that's behavioral, right? Because, you're using conditioning with the dog. So the dog presents, a feeling of security, safety, support dog, that type of thing. So behavioral is used in combination with a lot of other therapies, which we'll see, but it's pretty dominant today in the field, in the clinical field with treatments. Okay. All right. So that's the first 2 of our 6. Okay. So this will be the thumbnail for tomorrow. So make sure you've got these, psychoanalysis and behavioral. All right. Those are our 2 types of therapies. And again, you'll have to turn in the charts. Just make sure you get it. So if you haven't seen it, just make sure you review it. Anybody have any questions? Any questions? Okay, make sure you're working on your Chapter 7 stuff, your assignments, which are on Canvas, and getting those submitted to me. And then this is our last chapter. So we're in the last of last. So seniors, I think your last day is still in May. Got less than a month left. And then the rest of us, it's about a month from tomorrow. So we're out May 22nd. So I know even in this format, that will go very fast. So make sure you're on top of your assignments to get everything done. If you need anything, just email me.